She had the black turtleneck, the intense stare, the deep, unnatural voice. Elizabeth Holmes was supposed to be the next Steve Jobs, the youngest self-made female billionaire in America. At just 30 years old, her company Theranos was valued at $9 billion. She promised to revolutionize healthcare with a single drop of blood. Celebrities invested. Generals joined her board. Walgreens put her machines in stores nationwide. Time magazine named her one of the most influential people in the world. But it was all a lie. Every single bit of it. The technology didn't work. The tests were fraudulent. And Elizabeth knew it from the very beginning. This is the story of the greatest medical scam in American history. A tale of ambition, deception, and a woman who looked the world in the eye and lied without blinking. February 1984. Elizabeth Ann Holmes is born in Washington, D.C., to a family of overachievers. Her father worked for Enron, the infamous company that would later collapse in scandal. Her great-great-grandfather was a surgeon and hospital founder. Success was in her DNA, or so she believed. Elizabeth was obsessed with becoming somebody important. At 7, she filled notebooks declaring, "What I really want out of life is to discover something new that mankind didn't know was possible." In high school, she learned Mandarin, started a business selling software to Chinese universities, and got accepted to Stanford's chemical engineering program at 18. But Stanford wasn't the dream. Elizabeth didn't want to be a scientist working in someone else's lab. She wanted to be a founder, a visionary, a billionaire. In 2003, during her sophomore year, she dropped out to start Theranos, a combination of therapy and diagnosis. Her pitch was simple but revolutionary: blood testing with just a finger prick instead of needles and vials. The idea sounded like science fiction. Traditional blood tests required drawing multiple vials from your arm, sending them to labs, and waiting days for results. Elizabeth promised a future where a single drop from your finger could run hundreds of tests instantly, detecting everything from cholesterol to cancer. The machines would be small, portable, and placed in every pharmacy and home. No more needles, no more waiting. Healthcare transformed forever. Investors were mesmerized. This wasn't just a business opportunity. It was a humanitarian mission. Elizabeth played the part perfectly, adopting Steve Jobs' signature black turtleneck and speaking in an unnaturally deep voice she'd trained herself to use. She claimed the deep voice commanded more respect in male-dominated Silicon Valley. Everything was calculated, rehearsed, designed to project genius and authority. By 2010, Theranos had raised over $90 million without ever showing investors a working prototype. Elizabeth's secret? She never let anyone see the actual technology. Behind closed doors, Theranos was chaos. The Edison machines, named after Thomas Edison, didn't work. Engineers couldn't get accurate results from finger prick samples. The blood drops were too small, too contaminated by tissue fluid. Physics and biology simply wouldn't cooperate with Elizabeth's vision. But instead of admitting failure, Elizabeth doubled down. She fired anyone who questioned her. She created a culture of paranoia and secrecy, dividing teams so nobody could see the full picture. Employees signed brutal non-disclosure agreements, threatening lawsuits if they spoke out. The lab operated in secrecy, with blackout curtains and restricted access. When Walgreens demanded to see the technology before partnership, Elizabeth staged elaborate demonstrations using fake prototypes. When results came back wrong, she blamed the employees, never the machines. And when the Edison devices failed completely, she did something truly shocking. She secretly ran patient tests on traditional blood machines from Siemens, then reported them as Theranos results. By 2013, Theranos was flying high. Elizabeth landed a partnership with Walgreens to put Theranos wellness centers in thousands of stores. She joined the Harvard Medical School Board. Safeway's CEO invested $350 million remodeling stores for Theranos clinics. Her board of directors read like a military hall of fame, George Shultz, Henry Kissinger, General James Mattis, admirals and senators. Not a single one had medical expertise, but their names gave credibility. Forbes valued Theranos at $9 billion, making Elizabeth worth $4.5 billion on paper. She appeared on magazine covers, gave TED Talks, and was hailed as a revolutionary changing medicine forever. President Obama appointed her a presidential ambassador for global entrepreneurship. The myth was complete. A 19-year-old Stanford dropout had outsmarted the entire medical establishment. Except she hadn't. She'd just gotten better at hiding the lies. The cracks started showing in 2014. Tyler Schultz, grandson of board member George Shultz, worked in the Theranos lab and saw the disaster firsthand. Tests gave wildly different results. Quality control was non-existent. Patient health was at risk. He reported his concerns internally and was threatened with lawsuits. He went to his grandfather, a man who'd served as Secretary of State, expecting support. Instead, George Shultz believed Elizabeth over his own grandson, choosing loyalty to Theranos over family. Tyler quit and contacted regulators, but Elizabeth's lawyers came after him with everything. They threatened to bankrupt his family with legal fees. But Tyler wasn't alone. Erica Chung, another employee, also witnessed the fraud and contacted authorities. Meanwhile, patients were getting catastrophic results. One woman received false positive results, suggesting she was miscarrying. A man got incorrect PSA results affecting his cancer treatment. Real lives were being destroyed by fake technology. October 2015. John Carreyrou, an investigative journalist at the Wall Street Journal, receives a tip about Theranos. For months, he investigates, interviewing former employees, reviewing documents, and dodging Elizabeth's aggressive legal threats. On October 15th, his bombshell article publishes A Prize Startup's Struggles. The article exposes that Theranos secretly uses traditional machines for most tests, that the Edison devices don't work, and that the company has misled investors and endangered patients. Elizabeth fights back immediately, calling the article false and attacking Carreyrou's credibility. She goes on CNBC, on Mad Money with Jim Cramer, doubling down on her lies with that rehearsed deep voice and unblinking stare. But the dam has broken. Former employees speak out. Regulators investigate. More articles follow, each more damning than the last. By January 2016, federal agencies ban Elizabeth from operating labs for 2 years. The empire collapses rapidly. Walgreens terminates the partnership and sues for $140 million. Safeway abandons their investment. Partners flee. The $9 billion valuation evaporates overnight. Investors realize they've been scammed. By 2016, Theranos is worth nothing. Forbes revises Elizabeth's net worth from $4.5 billion to zero, calling her the world's youngest self-made ex-billionaire. But Elizabeth still won't admit the truth. She pivots, claiming Theranos will now focus on a miniature lab device called the Mini Lab. It's another fantasy. In September 2018, Theranos officially shuts down, leaving employees jobless and investors furious. Elizabeth faces the consequences she'd avoided for 15 years. In June 2018, federal prosecutors indict her on 9 counts of wire fraud and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Each count carries 20 years in prison. The woman who wanted to be the next Steve Jobs now faces becoming the next Bernie Madoff. The trial begins in September 2021, 3 years after indictment. Elizabeth's defense is stunning. She claims her ex-boyfriend and Theranos president Sunny Balwani controlled and abused her, manipulating her decisions. She testifies she believed the technology worked, that she was misled by her scientists and engineers. She cries on the stand, a stark contrast to the emotionless robot persona she'd projected for years. The deep voice is gone, replaced by a higher, softer tone. Prosecutors demolish her defense with evidence. Emails where Elizabeth explicitly directed fraud, investor presentations she personally approved containing lies, and testimony from patients harmed by fake results. On January 3, 2022, the jury convicts her on 4 counts of defrauding investors. She's acquitted on charges related to defrauding patients. A controversial verdict that angers many. Elizabeth remains free on bail while appealing, still maintaining some level of denial about the magnitude of her crimes. November 2022, Judge Edward Davila sentences Elizabeth Holmes to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. She must also pay $452 million in restitution to victims. Her lawyers had begged for house arrest, citing her 2 young children and claiming she'd shown remorse. The judge rejected this, stating that Elizabeth had shown no genuine acceptance of responsibility. On May 30th, 2023, Elizabeth reports to federal prison Camp Bryan in Texas, a minimum security facility. The black turtlenecks are gone. The billion-dollar valuation is gone. The dream of changing medicine is gone. What remains is a cautionary tale about Silicon Valley's fake-it-till-you-make-it culture taken to criminal extremes. Elizabeth Holmes didn't just lie to get funding. She endangered real patients with fake medical results. She prioritized her image over human lives. The youngest self-made female billionaire became the youngest major female fraudster in American history. And somewhere in a Texas prison, the woman who wanted to be the next Steve Jobs serves her sentence. A reminder that in the end, you can't fake science and you can't fake the truth.